Welcome to Family DynamiKs. I'm Katherine.
Hi, it's Liz.
And John.
Okay, and today we have with us our Aunt Judy and Joe and our cousin Christine and her husband Michael. Everybody say hello. So go ahead, Judy and Joe. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Hi.
There they are. And Christine and Michael are also there. They're sort of chaperoning because we're doing this via Zoom. They live in Virginia, but they're technically on vacation in New Jersey right now. So there's a lot of things going on. Is that right?
That's correct. Right.
Okay, so I nailed it. Good job. All right. I guess we haven't fully explained before. Our Aunt Judy is our dad Frank's younger sister, significantly younger, right, Judy? What was the age difference?
8 years.
8 years.
Okay.
So did you just feel like growing up he was just so much older you couldn't relate to him, or was he around a lot? What was that like?
Exactly. And no, he was not around. So he was graduating from Villanova when I was getting out of the 8th grade.
Oh, wow. That's
he went
a
to
big...
California in the Navy, and he never came back. So,
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's in Philadelphia, right? That's where your family home was.
Philadelphia, we're in the suburbs. So
Did we ever, as kids, visit that house that you grew up in?
several times.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. I think I stubbed my toe in that house, that backyard, numerous times, and Grammy, to no end, it irritated her. I think that's my memory of it, her getting very mad at me. Because you guys, unlike Southern California, did not have backyard gates. The backyards were all just open to each other, correct?
Yes, because we had an acre of ground, so we had a big lot next to us, empty. It was ours, and then that house above that. There was another house on the kitchen side, very close.
It's like very faint memories, right, Catherine? And obviously,
Yeah.
John, you probably have no memories of it.
No, I do not.
Well, I remember more clearly, I don't know if this is the house that we're talking about, visiting what I think of as Grammy's house in Philadelphia, the 2-story house. I think we came out in 1976. We did some kind of like road trip or something, and I think that's the house we came to.
In 1976, you would have been at our house in Northern Virginia.
In
Oh.
Fairfax, right? Was it Fairfax Station?
No, that was
Yeah.
Fairfax.
Fairfax.
And in 1980, we moved to Fairfax Station, which is 7 or 8 miles away.
Ah, okay.
Gotcha.
So then let's take it back a little bit, because I think when you talk about the age difference between our father and you, Aunt Judy, we obviously have a lot of kids in our family, 8 kids, and there is the significant age gap is between James and John, which is almost
18 years? Yeah.
18 years, which is a lot. So then when our dad decided he was going to move west, how did your parents feel about that? Because, obviously the acting and the entertainment world was not part of your upbringing, so that had to be surprising that he was making that choice.
My father was not happy. He needed him to come back from his stint in the Navy and go to law school.
Really?
Yeah.
I call him Pop-Up, but sometimes I get made fun of because he's not a pop-up book, and it sounds like I'm saying Pop-Up, your father. But what did your dad do? I don't think I ever had he had something to do with banks. Is that right?
National Bank examiner.
Did that involve a lot of travel, or was he home a lot?
He was gone all week long, Monday to Friday.
Wow.
All over Pennsylvania, New Jersey. So it was basically just Grandmom and myself. So,
Oh, wow. It's very interesting to hear just what it was like being his sister, just because, our understanding of you as our Aunt Judy, I thought you guys were close. I don't know.
Growing up.
Yeah, growing up, because I didn't really understand what an age difference would be like at that time in your life, and that he basically left and didn't come back. It's like, oh, it's so interesting to think about that it was kind of you and your mom.
Yep.
And he was out of the picture.
Yes.
And how early did she lose her hearing? Was she already having hearing problems when you were young?
Had poor hearing in one ear all her life.
Oh.
And she got a virus, and it killed the hearing in the other ear.
Oh, wow.
She could certainly hear and talk and, all that. It didn't impair her, except she had to wear a hearing aid, and you had to be pretty close to her for her to hear. So
Now I just think going back to, I had no idea that really Grammy Monday through Friday was basically
On her own, yeah.
solo parenting
Yeah.
with you. I mean, that is impressive. And then to think that when our dad left, to go to the West Coast, never came back. And so therefore...
Well, and he had been in the Navy before that, so
Right.
he was already kind of gone for a while.
And they also must have just been thrown by the fact that, my mom still says, like, Grammy was in shock with 8 children. I mean, it just was like the dad, for his disposition, had all these kids. And listen, growing up with our father, he did not seem well suited for having 8 children.
Not really, no.
It was always like he liked quiet in the household. He didn't like chaos. He liked order. None of that existed. So, I mean, it was like, what were you thinking, dude? But I remember only really one clear memory of your father, our grandfather. There was a carnival here in our area of town, and we were on a Ferris wheel, and they took us to the carnival. And I remember looking down and being so jealous because Katherine was standing with him, and he was buying her a doll, and I was stuck on the
Oh.
Ferris wheel.
Well,
that is one of my only memories of him, because he passed away what year? Do you remember?
Oh, gosh. I'd have to go get my purse and my
You don't have to.
book.
I feel it was like 1974 or 5.
Something like that.
Yes, that makes sense, because then I would have only been 5 or 6 years old.
I think I had all 3 of you because I didn't feel like you were old enough to go to the funeral. So
I feel like I was like 6.
6, yeah. So no, I didn't.
Well,
But I spent summers up with them. I mean, he worked all the time. I would take up. It was my second home with the kids. So she had all the equipment for babies and.
Oh, that's awesome, actually. I don't think, because one of the, being the only, both on both sides of our parents, we did not have a lot of cousins, aunts, or uncles here in California. So in some ways, having a lot of siblings was very nice. But, we didn't have... My mom's parents at one point lived somewhat close by, but they would also kind of go like, do not bring all 5 or 6 children currently at the time over for a long period of time. But, we did not have a lot of family extended here. So that's nice. So Joe, when you were working during the summer, you worked for the U.S. government, correct?
After I got out of the Navy, I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers in Philadelphia.
Wow.
And you'd commute almost every day then, correct, from the house?
We had a first house in Springfield, Delaware County, Pennsylvania. And I would take a bus to the subway and then go downtown. The office was in downtown Philadelphia in a section called Old City, very nice area, down by the Delaware River. And that was from 1965 to 70. And then I was offered a job in Washington, D.C., and we moved down to Fairfax, Virginia in 1970.
Oh.
And so we lived in that house for 10 years, 70 to 80. And your grandmother came to live with us in maybe 77, somewhere in the 70s.
I remember that house very clearly. That's the one with it had a big basement, and then...
No.
You don't remember it clearly, Katherine.
No. The house we moved into in Northern Virginia, the first one in 1970, was the house that your grandmother came to live with us. And we had to expand that house to build her a separate bedroom. And eventually we decided that house was it was too small. And we moved to this place called Fairfax Station. That was a much, much larger house. And that's what you remember.
That's what I'm thinking of, the Fairfax Station house then.
Yeah, it had a lot of land and a big basement and 6 bedrooms.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's the one I'm thinking.
That's the one that you remember.
That's the one where we did our infamous 8th grade trips when our dad sent us back east to visit all of you. And
That's when one of you got bitten by the ducket Burke Lake Park.
That was not me, but that's amusing.
And one of you fell in the water,
That
too.
was Liz.
I
That
mean,
was
how
Liz.
could it not be Liz? Of
I
course.
notoriously, I think it was seeking attention. Any body of water was somehow, I'd fall in.
Let me teeter on the edge and then fall
yeah.
in.
Or,
Yeah.
in the past, some sibling would be shoving me in. But, that's another story. What I remember? That was the first time I ever experienced humidity. Southern California, we did not have it here.
It's very dry
I
here,
remember
typically.
I was like, what is this? It is so hot and humid here. And you guys, I think you even had a little boat at the time, Uncle Joe, didn't you? We went down to the marina.
Over the years, I had many boats. I'm not sure which one I had then.
Many boats.
They would have all been in Annapolis, Maryland, which is where we kept our boats.
I want to go back to, I have no idea how the two of you met. I don't know.
Because I also did not know you were in the Navy like our father. I knew you were military because the local Legion, I've been to here in California. I went with James one time with you. So I knew you were a military man.
Oh, because he visited there when he was out here on a trip?
I think so,
okay.
yeah. So yeah, I agree with Katherine. Sort of your early years. Aunt Judy, I'd love to hear exactly going back. So
Well, because Dad wasn't around for sure, so he wouldn't have told us like any of that stuff. He probably barely even registered like what you were up to. And I certainly have never heard the original origin story of Judy and Joe, how they met.
I saw him, he probably didn't see me, in high school.
Oh.
I went to high school with his sister, Marjorie. You met her, Marjorie and Bob. And she would always have, because it was a old girls' school, an academy, and she would have the girls over for lunch at Christmas time. And he would come breezing in the house and up the steps because dated Philadelphia girls. So didn't want anything to do with us younger ones in the all-girls school. So that was the end of that, and didn't meet again until he just got out of the Navy, and I went to, his parents had a New Year's Day party, and Margie and her boyfriend, later husband, invited me to come to the party, and he was there. He had just gotten out of the Navy, so then we started.
now, do I hear any hint? Like, did you kind of have a crush on him initially? I mean, was he on your radar? No? Are you sure about that?
I was only looking at Malvern boys.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, and Malvern Prep was where your dad went.
Yes, and that was all boys, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that because James went to an all-boys school, so it was sort of a continuation of that, tradition. But in Southern California, there's not that many all-boys schools. I mean, there's a few, but so then were you going to an all-girls school, Aunt Judy?
Yes, with 59 in the class.
Oh,
so
wow.
they're small.
Mm-hmm.
So then how did, you don't have to go into deep detail, but how did the spark, Joe, how did it happen? I mean, finally around the holidays, you turn and decide to consider her?
You better say something
That's
really
enough
good.
information.
Yeah, something really good.
I mean, obviously worked out.
Numbers, So
Oh my
I
goodness.
remember he came over to the house and he fixed me a grilled cheese sandwich because I couldn't fix a grilled cheese sandwich. So
Oh, that's solid. I mean, that is, if a guy can make a good grilled cheese, that's actually,
It's a pretty good move.
I've actually taught my son that because I said, if you can make a good grilled cheese, you can go far in this world, honestly.
Right.
So, Joe, good move right out of the gate, grilled cheese. So,
I want to have something corrected in my mind. I always thought my father was in the Navy, but James keeps saying he was in the Coast Guard.
Oh.
I don't know.
well,
So
we
what-
can fact check that because James is in some ways, right, John, he can be the family historian about certain things.
Yeah, I'm not remembering perfectly, but I always thought the joke was, Frank said, "Oh, I joined the Navy just like you, Dad," and then your dad was like, "Well, I was in the blank." I thought it was Army, and then he's like,
No.
"Well, what were all those stories about the ship?" And he was like, "That was just because something." Although
Was
then Go ahead.
Your Coast Guard.
All right. Although then James, our brother, flipped it again and did Army
Probably
instead of
right.
Navy.
Yeah, we'll have to find out. James does usually know these things, and he might. And I don't know if has any documentation to back it up, but we'll find out for
or if
sure.
it's just anecdotal. Like
So
that's how.
you did come. Were you a bridesmaid in our parents' wedding?
Yes.
Our parents had a very untraditional. Michael, our cousin-in-law, would appreciate this. A very untraditional wedding photographer, Bob Willoughby, and he took photos that were not like set up family.
He took like candids.
Very candid, organic photos. And I remember looking, I'm like, who is that with the cute bob haircut? Oh, that's my sister Judy when we were really young. So I always remember you in those photo albums being there. So, I mean, did you, because our parents basically had a West Coast, romance, and between now people date for so long, but your generation was like getting married was a much shorter period of, wooing someone. So did you even meet our mother before basically coming?
No, your father, when I would go out to California, my parents took me out when he was in the Navy several times. And then they went to Europe for 6 weeks. And I went out to stay with your Aunt Katherine and Aunt Mary.
Oh, really?
Those are the two.
Was Aunt Catherine in Santa Barbara, I think?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
They were wonderful. I had the most wonderful summer. Aunt Catherine was great. She taught me how to iron a shirt. I never would probably have learned that. And Aunt Mary was a character. I think she had a little drinking problem, but that, I could be wrong. But it was a wonderful 6 weeks. And your father took me. So I was in high school. We went to Palm Springs. So your father was a tour guide.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was for
I don't
sure.
know how we got there, but it was, several day trip. And I remember we stopped somewhere and I went in a store and I remember writing Grandmom that I bought these most incredible pair of shoes for like a quarter, and they were rubber flip-flops, And, so that's how long ago they've been in existence.
So at what point was Dad engaged to our mom? You guys are like contemporaries. You're close in age.
No, your mother wasn't in the picture, but his friends were, like that Basil Sullivan and his brother Ned and all them. But I was too young to,
really hang with that crowd.
Right. And so then he marries, somebody a year younger than me.
Yeah.
So.
Our mother was only 21 when she got married.
Barely. I think she was telling us just the other day something about when they got engaged, she had basically just turned 20. Dad was maybe 28, so it was like, ooh, it's sounding like 20 and 30 sounds like a big gap-ish.
Well, I think you're conflating a little bit. So, right, when they got married, it was right after graduation, so not right after her birthday. But then I think the first time, Mom was saying when they came out to visit at Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
So I think she hadn't had her birthday yet.
So she was 19?
And he didn't want her to say 19, so she was supposed to say 20.
Do you remember this trip?
Christine's reaction.
Kind of. I think maybe it was the one we went over to Jack. No, I really don't.
Oh, that's interesting. We'll ask our mom to go on record and see if she recalls the story.
She might not want to go on record. I don't know.
I mean, 19 and 27, 28 does sound...
It's a different time, everybody. It was a different time.
That's true.
Very different time. So,
But...
What year did your parents get married?
Ooh, I don't know.
1960 would have been 3
or 4?
I heard it down somewhere, but I don't
Were they married before you and Dad?
Yeah.
So, Judy, when you were in the wedding, were you already with Joe, or did you come with just your family by yourself, and then Joe was a little bit after, timeline-wise?
Right, yeah. No, wasn't in the picture,
So, Joe, when did you first meet this side of the family? Had you known our dad growing up, or was it?
No. No, I didn't know anything about Frank or your side of the family at that time.
It might have been better not to disclose it, Judy. I said it might have been better not to disclose that. You were
I
dating,
have this crazy older brother who lives in California.
who already has 4 children. No, who
Or
knows
however
at that
many.
point? No, at that point, I don't think he might have maybe just had the 2 boys. So
I remember James is coming. I'm not sure about William to Grandma's house.
oh, coming back for a visit. Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
No, I remember Grammy when we were, so then our experience was Grammy would come for large chunks during the summer.
Yeah, like a month or something. She'd come
yeah.
for a visit.
And she'd come with her carry-on, one little bag. I mean, it was the teeniest little thing.
And it was blue with a bunch of flowers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That was the one.
And inside the bag, even though it was a small bag, there was a big box of Tastykakes.
Oh,
Had to, absolutely. And that would happen the first night.
Tastykake crimpets and the butterscotch.
Oh,
yeah.
No, he liked chocolate.
well, the chocolate cupcakes, that was part of it. But then the butterscotch was another one.
Yeah, Dad for sure liked both.
He was not discriminatory. He liked tasty cakes.
Just chocolate, because I like the butterscotch.
Oh.
Yeah, honestly, what I remember.
Chocolate cupcakes for her to take out. So
Exactly. I remember only the chocolate. When I was working and had a friend who was from Philly, he was like, "What are you talking about? It's all about the butterscotch crimpets." And I was like, "I don't even know what that is." But now they sell them out here, and so now I do understand.
Yeah, on the anniversary sometimes of our father's passing, when we get together, somebody rolls in with a bunch of tasty cakes. So, and now, cupcakes have become quite, a revelation in modern time that these cupcakes don't necessarily stand up anymore. But
Not true. Stop
okay,
it.
yeah. See, James and John feel like that is.
Well, they were a real treat back in the day. I mean, we
anything
were
in
so
our-
excited.
Anything in our household that was chocolate. So Grammy coming was, first of all, the taskmaster was coming into town. Because, man, if we didn't do our chores when she was in town in a timely manner, the worst thing ever was she would step in and start doing them.
Oh, then you'd be in
my
big trouble.
God. I mean, you might as well just...
Is somebody going to rake those leaves? Next thing you know, Grammy's out there raking those leaves, and you are in big trouble if Grammy is raking the leaves and it was your job.
Ooh. So she would roll in with her little blue flowered bag straight off the airplane. And I mean, I don't know if she controlled her hearing aid throughout. I mean, there was times, we'd always have a high pitched sound, but
The whistling.
because the house is so chaotic. I mean, there are times I think she turned it down just to tune us out. It was so insane. But our father would go to work, and it was interesting. I always said, like, our mother and her got along, but they were very different types, obviously. And during summer, it was sort of a free-for-all. Most of us did not go to day camp. So you might like this story, Joe. We would all pile into a car. This is not the infamous Frisbee story, but it is the story of there are no seatbelt laws in California. So at some point it's 100 degrees today right now in the valley. So at some point, my mom would go, all right, we're just heading over to the beach. We'd all pile in, and Grammy would get in the car and sit next to our mother, who, let's just say, had an aggressive driving technique. And through a canyon, I just remember Grammy at one point pulled out
A very swervy, lots
windy,
of windy
high,
yeah.
We were all used to it. Grammy pulls out her rosary and
Right.
starts saying a full decade, like out mumbling loud, because she literally thinks this is the end of her life. And I remember looking over her going like, gosh, she might be right. And so I started to pray with her. So, I mean, the summers she would spend with us were, insane. And actually, Christine, you and I just texted a very funny story about the movie E.T. and Grammy.
I
Because,
was just going to bring that up. She thought that was awful.
well, and at the time, because, E.T. is a very beloved movie that everybody, emotional, people cry. And I remember we took her to see it and asking her how, and everybody's crying at the end of it, regardless of your age. And she just looks so mad. And I go, oh, Graham, what did you think of the movie? That was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I just thought it was awful. And I couldn't figure out why. So about a day later, I'm like, why did you think that was such a bad movie? It was so good and this and that. She goes, and we realized that she really did not, she would read lips or her hearing was in a way that it wasn't that easy for her to hear, especially in a movie theater. So much of it was lost on her at that moment. And I mean, yes, E.T. was really ugly with his long finger and the whole situation. So you're like, oh, okay, now I get it.
It was basically a horror movie to her. Whoopsie. Oh, well. Oh, sorry, Grammy.
Her hearing aid, in those days, they, took people aside if they declared something. And we always declared that she wore a hearing aid. Mm-hmm. And she wore it in the center, attached to her bra, and then the cord went up in the earpiece. Always took her aside, made her strip the top to see this.
Oh,
It's so angry because we would tell them this is what it is.
you mean when you would travel and stuff?
Yes, when I'd send her out to California.
Oh, ridiculous.
I'd take her to the airport, and it was just maddening. So
I do remember that sort of the little box that would sit right.
Yeah.
Yes. As a kid, it was very fascinating. Like, what is going on here? And, I mean, even all the noise we could make, like I said, if she was up taking a little nap, it would be like, well, she's trying for hearing aid. We can make a lot of noise. And it was, that was one of those things as a kid. You were like, don't wake up Grammy, because then she would come down around 5 o'clock and she wanted her Wisp Pride, which was sort of a cheese spread
on some Ritz crackers.
And just one little glass of wine.
Half a glass of wine.
Until Frank came home.
Wait, did she do that when she was living with you, or was that a phenomenon because our house?
They used to have my father, and she at 4 o'clock every day, Manhattans, and I don't know about the whisper. I remember her having that. But
Yeah, well, it was, I think at our house, it was like Cheese Whiz.
Well, maybe, yeah.
I don't remember that. I remember her after spending time in California. She did admit she would turn her hearing aid down.
Oh, well, I mean, that's just a coping mechanism.
It was too much.
Chaotic would be the word for sure. Yeah.
But also, if she had a hearing aid now, her life would have been so different.
Oh, yeah.
Because the technology has improved so much. So for her, she had to turn it down because if there was too much other noise, then it just was so magnified. Because really all it was kind of a magnified microphone.
Yeah, just turning everything up.
An amplifier. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that just...
I was her ears all the time, because my father was gone.
Yeah, Joe, going back, you said she moved in with you what year?
What happened was Kathleen and Christine were born in Philadelphia. Those 3 years in Springfield. And then he got the job, and I was expecting Megan. And we moved down to the Kings Park West house in July, and she was due in August, and she didn't come till September.
Oh, wow.
So there's 5 years between Patrick and Megan. So during that time, then we had built that room. It was up on the second floor, really, but the second floor was built into the backyard. And Patrick came along. He didn't have a bedroom. His furniture and so forth was in the laundry room, like his changing table and his dresser and all that. I didn't know where his crib was. But anyway, so I converted everything we could. We converted the garage. We had a room built on the back, and it was still too small. So that's when we moved. So Patrick's 75, so 76 maybe. So, yeah.
And lived with you until she passed away.
Right.
Yep.
Wow. Just to go back a little bit, I texted James. I asked him, I said, what branch of military was our, father's father? So he was a supply officer in the Army on a ship during World War I.
Never heard Army. But I had postcards from France. And thank goodness when we moved, I didn't get rid of them. And we framed them.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't remember Army.
Well, it would make sense if he was on a ship.
Yeah.
So he's on a ship for the Army in World War I. Like I said, James probably has done
some investigating.
I mean, he might be right, but yes, this is part of the confusion is, the ship versus Army seems. And if he never said Army, that's why you guys never heard it and why no one knew it.
Well, they never talked about anything.
No.
Thing I have from my father is a little personal trunk that you would get. I mean, small thing like this. I keep recipes in them. And that would be from World War One. It's a metal thing. It's really neat. And that's the only thing I have. And so they never talked about anything. So I really know nothing about my family. So
Yeah, that's kind of why we even started this podcast, because we realized if we don't start asking questions now, some generations we're gonna not be able to have these conversations. So we got to start doing it.
nobody better come and ask me about Killmond's side of the family when I was growing up, because I know nothing. So
yeah, I think we're starting to do more research to find out about it, because just being you and Dad and separated by the years, you did have one other sibling that passed away when he was an infant,
yes.
right?
And I just said to Joe last night, it's terrible. I think he died of either bowel or bladder blockage. Mm-hmm. I think he was 4 years older than me. Mm-hmm. I think he died at 9 months. I have no idea when his birthday is, where he's buried. That's when, after he died, they moved, because they lived in Upper Darby, which is right outside the city. And when he died, they moved out to the house in Springfield because he didn't want Grandma living in the house, after
with the
just
memories.
Baby. Yeah. So.
Well, we had a sort of what you call a hutch or a secretary in our main room. And the bottom drawer had cards and paperwork in it. And because honestly, as kids, we had nothing better to do sometimes in a hot summer in Southern California. That is how I found out about that sibling. We're just going through paperwork. I'm sure our parents were, yeah, I'm sure our parents were beyond irritated at our nosiness, but that's what happens. And I remember finding it, a birth certificate, and I'll try to track it down. Yes, because I remember saying, "Who is this?" to my father.
His name was William.
William. Mm-hmm. And that, you don't normally see your parent have a reflective, sort of true sadness. And he was talking about the grief your mother experienced and the hardness that she was basically at the hospital with him it wasn't even a full year, I think he was alive. But he goes, I just remember how hard that was on my family. And, but he goes, I was so young, and he was a baby, so it's not like I had that much of a relationship with him, but he remembers just what you're referring to, the grief and the sadness that your mom experienced. But like I said, it was us going through drawers because, we had it wasn't locked, so it was in the main part of the house, so what else did we have to do?
Surprised that made it out.
It was in a bunch of papers, so there were cards in there, and there was just different things, and, I got to go back and find it. My mom probably does have it somewhere, because I think you have that secretary now at your house, Katherine.
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think it was
out to Katherine. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the after the earthquake,
yeah,
our mom didn't know where to put it or whatever. Somehow I ended up with custody of it.
Well, that was one of those things I'm like, that cannot be sold. That's
No.
one of the things that needs to be kept in the family, just because it's always been part of our family. So, so then they moved, and that would have been the sibling in between the two of you, correct?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
I think it's 4 years.
Oh, okay.
I think when your father died, she was, of course, older. Mm-hmm. She didn't really, it registered, and she knew what happened, but she didn't go to pieces over it or something. Maybe because she'd already experienced it and didn't want to do it again.
Right. Mm. Well, I do remember, and now as an adult, you think about, how hard that would be to have lost your child. And then we had our brother, William, which was named after my father's brother. Yeah. And I remember when you guys came out for William's funeral, I think you came out with Grammy. Grammy was here. Yes. And I remember she was sitting behind me in the pew, and that's when I turned around. That's because Grammy was very, I don't want to say stoic, but she didn't show a lot of emotion. She was kind of a tough lady. Yeah. And I remember turning around, she was breaking down crying. She goes, I should have gone first. And I was like, oh, gosh. So I think you get to a certain age in life, and maybe by the time our father was so quick. You guys came out to visit that night, and he passed away basically the next day. She might have been shocked, quite honestly. It was just so quick. But, you think about the life that she had, and I didn't even know about that she basically, all Monday through Friday, when you think about it.
That she was on her own.
That she was on her own. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that in itself during that time. So, we hold up Grammy, and Catherine's named after her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then one of my favorite stories is our niece, Katherine, is named after her.
And she got the full... Grammy's, your mom's name was Katherine Aloysius. So I'm Katherine Margaret, which definitely sounds like a nun. But our niece... James's daughter is Katherine Aloysius, and then
Grammy goes, "Oh, why did you name your child that? I didn't even like my name." Aloysius, the middle
I would
name.
agree with her.
I didn't know Aloysius.
Oh, yeah. I don't know where in the world that came from. But yes, she was.
Wow.
Like I said, James digging that out. Well, to get on a funner, lighter note, the one thing Grammy used to do, Grammy had the habit of reading romance novels.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, as a
That
child,
is shocking. When I was a teenager and found that out, it was very surprising. Well, first of all, my image of Grammy, this very tiny woman knitting. That's like and she always had a tissue up her sleeve. Those are my main Grammy touch points. So to realize, as a teenager, she's reading what? I mean, come on. That is shocking.
Yeah, well, I remember picking up because I'm a voracious reader, and it was like, "Oh, what are you reading?" She goes, "Put that down."
No.
Oh, why? And then, of course, I had to find and sneak that out later to see what she was reading, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
But that then when we came to visit you, Katherine and I came for a visit to basically, I don't want to say goodbye to Grammy, but she was getting very much up in the years.
Well, because we had come for our 8th grade trip, but then this was a separate trip years later. We were both like in our 20s, I would guess.
Oh, yes.
We remember that. The two of you were hysterical with your stories about growing up with your dad. And
Well, I just remember you guys had installed that little motorized chair that you take up and down the stairs.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And she kind
I used.
of, she did not use or did use?
Not really. I mean, her room was down the basement.
Every morning.
Well, yes, but she didn't go up and down. She came up in the morning.
Right, she never went down.
again. She'd sit in the family room on the chair, and I'd say, if it was a senior citizen troop, or just, a meeting for an hour. It was like sending your kid to nursery school. Just go for an hour. Just, I think I'll just stay home today. And I think, oh, great, I just left an hour. So, yeah, but she'd sit in the chair in the family room and wouldn't move until bedtime.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I remember that visit when we came out, we rode that chair up and down the stairs.
Yeah, I think
have
we
a
did.
picture of Katherine in it. So.
Oh, we got to find that.
And it was a great visit with her because there was I want to say a lightning with her. She, at that point, I think some of the little, I don't want to say hardness as a kid, like she could scare you as a grandmother sometimes.
Well, she could get mad pretty easily because we were rambunctious, and I don't think that was, she didn't appreciate that too much.
I don't blame her too much for that.
And no, we were terrible. I'm not making up excuses. We were horrifying. Anyway, go on.
So then as young adults, I think, there was just fun to be had with her and try to have conversations and make fun of her about her romance novels. And she liked all that. And I still have my Afghan from her.
I do too, yeah.
Which is the color palette, is always interesting. You're like, what were these choices? But I
thought yours was really pretty. I if I'm remembering correctly, isn't yours kind of like mint green and yellow?
Look at the envy that is still there. Yes, it is mint green. I got a good color palette. So
I think mine is red and green and orange. I'm not sure why, but sure.
That definitely was her legacy, the Afghans.
Yeah.
And she would just put these colors together based on kind of what she had.
Oh.
And it didn't always.
Kids, she asked.
Right, she did ask.
But I'm surprised she didn't ask all of you what colors you wanted. But Megan has a green, orange, and red.
Oh.
Oh, similar.
I didn't pick that. And I remember when Granddad Boyle was in the nursing home, when they lived down the shore, and before he got sick, he would take a nap every night, and she had made them a blue and white, I think, big Afghan. And he'd say, I'm going in under Kitty now for my nap. Anyway, it was a big joke. So when he got sick and we went into the nursing home, Grandma Boyle said, do you have any Afghan that you don't care what happens to?
Oh.
Because they stole everything. So anyway, I said, yeah, well, I have this Afghan that's green. And so I gave it to them. It did not get stolen.
Oh, my gosh.
Came back and I gave it to Megan. I think she
has it in her car. That's what the purpose was. Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh.
So that was her legacy.
At some point, James wanted her to knit things other than Afghans, I recall,
geez.
which was he was pushing it. And that was not, he like bought her the knitting pattern and he gives it to her and it's like some complicated sweater. And she tried and then she was like, no. Her whole thing was she would just knit those long panels and then you sew 5 of them together and you've got an Afghan. Bingo. So she made him a sweater vest that was basically 2 Afghan panels that were.
Does he still have it?
That I don't know. But he was like, oh, I guess she's not going to knit me this sweater. It's like she's not here for you to like give her jobs. She can do whatever she wants.
She taught Rosie and I how to do that stitch, I guess.
The knit purl.
And we were coming back east on one of our summer road trips, and we were going to stop and visit your family, and the whole family at one point. And Rosie and I determined that we were going to surprise Grammy with, we were going to give her a blanket.
Just what she needs.
Now, this was, I think, might have been the station wagon era. So the whole back section, Rosie and I, which I don't know how this was possible, but we put a mini piano back there. We had our sewing section. We'd have signs up. I mean, we must have driven our parents crazy.
Oh, theirs.
Oh, yeah. And so we tried to sew something by the time we got to you guys.
Sew or knit? You mean knit?
Knit.
Okay.
Knit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was weeks. And I think we got about 2 inches done by the time we saw Grammy. It was like we had too many other things going on in the back seat constantly, irritating our parents. So, yeah, because we would come for visits. They basically pile us all in the back, and we'd make various stops across the country.
Well, the 76 one is the one that I referenced earlier, but I think there were other ones, but I can't remember.
I remember the 76 one, and that was at our old house in Fairfax. And I remember the camper.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Technically, it was a trailer because we were not allowed to be in it while we were driving.
Yeah, I remember that parked. We lived in a court, and I remember that parked. And I guess some of you must have slept in that, and everybody else must have slept in the house. I don't remember.
Yeah, that sounds right.
No, I mean, we would just kind of all pile out of there. I mean, I don't know how we all fit in that trailer regardless. I mean, God forbid, when we would all sleep in there at night, if a mosquito got in there, I mean, it would be like all hell broke loose. I mean, because it was like there's too many people trying to, we could have broken the whole little trailer apart trying to get one mosquito out of there. But that's how you could get that many kids across country and do multiple stops and see the U.S.'s greatest, whether you're going to Yellowstone or, we would be stopping at the, I can't remember what, like, John, you weren't even part of it.
Don't look at me.
You weren't born.
He's like,
That's
I
right.
was not alive.
He's not going to help me.
You never did any of these while
The
I was
only
alive.
reason I think Mom was pregnant with Eddie,
Oh, right.
and it was to see, because it was 1976, that's why I remember this, to see the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. Like it was on display or something. And so that was one of the reasons for the trip.
We're lucky we all made it because my dad at one point decided he was going to take a nap. And this is once again before seatbelts. So my mom decides she's going to drive, but I will never forget this. James was sitting in the front next to her. And my mom can be very also distractible driver. So I don't know why she needed to take her hands off the wheel at one point to do something. And she asked James to steer. And when I say we all almost went off the road, did flip the entire of the thing, and my dad woke up literally almost having a coronary, And
Rightly so.
my mother never drove on a road trip ever again. Never again. And she tried to act like, oh, Frank,
It was fine.
I don't know why we just basically went off the road and basically course corrected. And James was like 14 at the time. I mean, it was just total insanity as usual. But I mean, like I said, we all survived it. You, Christine, did you come out with your grandmother when you came to visit us on one of your summer trips, or did you do solo?
I know definitely I must have come out with her probably my 8th grade, but then I did come out a couple times by myself.
Oh, yeah. You came for Catherine's bachelorette party and
Oh
wedding.
my God.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Liz, you have such a good memory. I barely,
Jeez. I mean, I remember being there, but I don't remember a bachelorette party.
Oh, I have pictures of you. Yes, you were there.
That's scary.
Well, I think it was a whole wedding week, and I remember Joe and Judy came as well, because Katherine was, besides James and Michelle, who were back east, this is the first Southern California wedding in our family.
yeah, that's true. I mean, and although I tried to make it not a big shadooby-doo, because that's more my style, it was like a morning wedding. It's like, it's at 10:30. Like, what? What?
It was beautiful.
Whatever. But yeah, a lot of people came out for the wedding. That was really nice.
No, Christine and I were lucky because our father, which was probably very, I don't know if you ever knew this story, Judy and Joe, when he trying to be an actor here in Los Angeles, but having all these kids, he always had side jobs.
Oh, wait. I want to ask before you get onto the side jobs. Judy, do you remember him being an actor? Or was there anything that he was in that you were like, oh my gosh, that's my brother?
Oh, yeah. We had to go see Psycho, of course. I thought it was awful. It was, it was a drive-in movie.
Oh.
And I was in the back seat. I just went on the floor. I'm not good with horror movies. And, he had such a small part, at the bar, and that was it. He was gone. But the rest of the movie.
It was in a hardware shop.
Well, hardware.
And
Right.
it was almost like a comedy scene.
And his line was, "Lady to see you, Sam."
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I saw Elmer Gantry, but I don't know where. I don't remember going someplace to see it. And then, of course, in television, Petticoat Junction and all of them.
Right. I mean, and you're like, how are you notifying people? Like, hey, I'm going to be on an episode of Wonder Woman or The Munsters. It just was a harder time to catch it. Before VCRs, Eddie now goes back and is able to find some of these appearances, which is crazy.
He's slowly accumulating an archive that he's going to share with everybody at some point. What about when General Hospital really started happening? Because then you could see him almost every day.
Yeah, we watched, and Grandma watched. We would always turn it on, and so she would watch that religiously every day.
Aww.
And although she couldn't hear, that's the type of show that she could figure out enough of the storyline that she knew what was going on.
Well, it was like
Plus,
a romance.
it had romance,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
like a romance
Oh,
novel.
exactly.
Yeah, so it was right up her alley.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying that it was, he always, acting was something that our father always did, but he would have very interesting side gigs. And at one point, he was part of the LA Unified School District as a teacher, and he was retiring. And there was a small pension. And you're talking about retiring, or he was leaving. He was not even 40, I don't think, or 42. And with the small amount of money, he thought, well, I'm either going to open up a dry cleaners or a pup. And some other father in the parish sat him down and said, you know what Frank is really needed in the San Fernando Valley? A Catholic bookstore. Now, to this day, we had that Catholic bookstore for 25 years. And after he passed away, I, by default, practically ended up running it. But the one bonus was I would call Christine to catch up because I could, basically the long distance charge would be on the store to catch up with you versus our own phone bill. So on a hot summer day, Christine and I would talk for about an hour catching up on everybody, what was going on.
Which also, I'm sure it was not super busy in the store.
How dare you? That Catholic bookstore was around for
A long time,
25 years. So our father, in a way, for having a very traditional upbringing, had such an unorthodox life here in California. And, also to think, now the ages we are at, that he passed away at 58, is so young.
It's so young.
You were only 8 years old, John, at the time. So it's just now in perspective, you're like, wow. And one of the last things he ever said to our mother was, because like I said, he had taken a turn for the worse, but we didn't know that it was so imminent that he was going to pass away. And I remember my mom said, I've called Judy and said to her that she needs to come now. And you guys basically came. And I think our father was waiting for you and your mother to come, and our brother James and his wife Michelle. But we still thought, it could be weeks, day. We had no idea.
Right. You had the hospice meeting like what, that day or the day before?
We met with people talking about what kind of care he could have either in a facility or at home, or it was definitely not.
But I knew it was serious because I have never forgotten your reaction, Judy, because you hadn't seen him. And he looked so drastically different. You walked out and you said, I didn't know how sick he was. And for those of us that had sort of seen the year progression, it was like, oh, yeah, you're right. He looks so different. So my mom stayed with him that night. And one of the last things he ever said to her, he's like, I don't want to miss anything. And now as an adult, you realize, you two have been blessed with grandchildren and everything's happened in your life, your in-laws. And, the only thing we had was our daughter-in-law, his daughter-in-law, which was Michelle. So, and he didn't get to see any grandchildren. And I always think he just so loved babies. And that's why there were 8 children in our family. And it was so crazy to think that we still feel him and his presence. And, our mom never remarried, which, she was only 48 when he passed away. We thought that might happen, but
that or become a nun.
We did ask her though. We said,
and
Mom,
she was like, "Oh yeah, I thought maybe I would." We were like,
"Could you
oof.
imagine?" Yeah. So she said she had been tempted to become a nun at one point. I said, "Too late. You had 8 children. You're not. There's no gain out of it now." So no. So because now, how many grandchildren on that side of the family do you guys now have?
7.
Oh wow. That's amazing. I mean, because 4 kids. And does everybody live is everybody spread out? Because we're Megan and Kathleen.
No, nobody lives with us.
Oh, nobody lives near you even?
No.
What?
Megan's in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
But she's about an hour, a little over an hour in Ellicott City, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
We are in West Grove, Pennsylvania, which is about 2.5 hours from Mom and Dad. We're like at the corner pocket of Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. So we're right over the border into Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kathleen lives about a half an hour north of where we live.
Ah, yeah, it's spread out, but I mean, at least it's not too
well.
far.
And then Patrick's in Florida, so.
Oh, that I knew, yeah, because we're on Facebook together.
Facebook is so amazing that you can keep up with everybody.
Yeah, that has helped because, I see Megan. I still remember Uncle Joe, you talking about going to Megan's first karate tournament.
I remember that, yeah.
How shocked you were that she basically took down her opponent.
Girl power.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, and who knew? Because Megan sort of, her, early childhood, I mean, I remember being told Megan when she had diabetes, juvenile diabetes, when we were kids, I remember my dad was concerned because he thought, well, okay, with all these kids, is anybody else going to have it, in our family? Which, Rosie was the only one highly sensitive to sugar, but not in that way at all. So it was the Megan became the takedown karate queen was pretty impressive. Which, and Michael, our cousin-in-law, is in the background right now, but thanks to him, he is notorious for one of the longest Christmas letters that comes every year that my reading glasses are no longer sufficient. I need a magnifying glass because there's so much information on it. But that's just sort of your passion, Michael, right?
Yeah, it's grown. It's definitely, it wasn't supposed to be as big as it is now, but I think it's great because it's a time capsule.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We have a binder full of them, and, we find ourselves going back trying to figure out what year the kids did what, and when did this happen? And, I try to add more to it every year, it seems.
Oh, I've never thrown mine away. Ever since you've done it, I have it. It's I keep a couple Christmas cards or holiday cards from every year. Yours is a mainstay. I always, and I sit down with Mark and Ethan and go, all right, let me get out my extra strong reading glasses and because the sides, the corners.
Well, and it has a collage of pictures. Usually it's both. It's a lot of written material and then a lot of amazing pictures of what's been going on during the year.
But I appreciate you do what's the classic, there's factual information, but it's a positive, upbeat spin. Our mom used to do Christmas cards, and she took quite a few years off, right, John, until she did one. I think you might have even called me about it, Christine. Then she did one a few years ago that no one was able to edit before she sent out.
And people had notes. Wait, what did you write, Mom?
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know.
John, do you remember coming, Eddie, to stay with me while your mother and her friend went to Ireland, Katherine?
Oh yeah, we Ed just mentioned that when we were talking to our mom last week or something. Yeah, when you guys were talking about the Fairfax houses, I never realized you guys were in 2 houses. I only knew about that second one. I mean, that was a great trip. We visited some other people, but then had a great time with you guys. I do remember that we went to the FBI building.
Ooh.
But I don't remember anything else about the FBI building. But most.
I remember taking you to the caverns.
Oh, wow. I don't remember that. Oh, no.
And you got a bloody nose.
Well, that happened to me a lot at that age.
And so I pulled over and I said, pinch your nose and put your head down or something. And Eddie was, no, that's not what you do. And he was so upset. So anyway, we got it to stop, but boy, oh boy, still don't know. I don't know how I got it to stop, but I did. And to this day, I don't have it with me, but I carry a first aid thing, these stings, and I thought, oh my God, something happens again.
No, yeah, that's good. Yeah, it was, I got him a ton, sort of like middle grade school, and it's sort of, I don't know, at the beginning it was, pinch your nose, tilt your head back, and then they changed it to a degree like, tilt it forward. But for me, and I ruined a lot of school shirts, but...
Yes, put his head back. I said, he'll choke on the blood. So you do that.
Yeah. It ended up for me, you just had to wait it out. You just bleed for a long time, and then it's done. It was crazy. But for Ed and I, in some ways, the most important part of that trip was playing darts. And... that Uncle Joe gave us a dartboard.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
How did you get that back to California?
I don't know. I do remember there were
a big suitcase.
I think we did, and whatever. We were kids, cram it in there. It was fine. And then we, didn't quite ruin a door at when we got home, but we used it a lot.
Now remember the notorious when James and Michelle actually got married, and we all went to go. It was her family's in Baltimore, I think it was.
Yes.
We went to that one. We all went. And when you said, how did they get that on the plane? One of the most notorious stories was, my dad, if all of you are not ready to leave for the airport, I'm leaving you. If all, so everybody, basically packed our own bags. Besides winter coats and our wedding outfit, we were left to our own devices. So we probably took up 2 rows on an airplane. And I remember looking over at Eddie, and he was cauterizing something. I mean, that dude brought on a full telephone, broke it down, and was rebuilding. I mean, he could have been building, God knows what, and that got through security. Because he just was always tinkering with things. And I remember looking over going like, what the heck is that kid doing?
He brought something to entertain himself. A phone to take apart.
Yeah, and that was the famous where our dad, we stayed at the Econo Lodge in Baltimore. But, we were all there.
That was in a great neighborhood.
Oh, no. No, the whole thing was But, that was very important that we were all there because that was the first wedding. It might have been of all the cousins because James is the oldest, I think, technically. And, we had to be back east and, be appropriate and, be on time for everything for Michelle's family for the big wedding. And because there was 8 of us kids. There was all of us. Even you came, little John Moe. So yeah, it was that was very fun, crazy cousin times because both sides, my mom's side and my dad's side, we all came together for that wedding. And we love when you guys come to California and visit. So I know you stay at our mother's house, which can be somewhat chaotic, but we still love when you come and visit.
We're overdue.
Yeah, we're trying to get there.
Stayed in Calabasas. That was fun. In Calabasas or something.
I remember when you stayed in the hotel, and I thought that was a very good idea versus staying at mom's. Yeah. Get yourself a little bit of distance and some space.
You got a free drink in the afternoon.
Even better.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so awesome to catch up and get your perspective on things and sort of jog some memories.
And we'll have
Yeah,
to do just
fun.
we'll have to do just a cousin one, Christine, too, maybe with Megan or Kathleen as well.
Yeah, or Patrick. I mean, whatever
Well,
sibling combination.
Yeah, and I will say, Patrick, as a kid, I don't know if you told me this, Christine, or something happened where that was Grammy's buddy, man. I mean, she thought
yes.
Patrick was just
the best.
the best. And, as a kid, you're going there like, there's obviously he's got 3 older sisters. There's all of us. And I was like, what do you mean? I mean,
No, Patrick's the winner.
Oh, Patrick she just thought he was,
The bee's knees?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was part of the problem, that she was too much sometimes because, she lived with us for so long, never really had a problem. But the one thing was Patrick, and he was difficult. And, she was right there, knew what was happening. Patrick got in trouble in school or something like that. So, it was hard dealing with him. And he was her favorite by any means. But Patrick, the funny story about him, I have this friend, Arlene, and her husband, Tom, who's since deceased, but he was an FBI agent. And the two of them, if you talk to either one of them, they quiz you. And they ask the same questions every time, especially Tom, when he saw you, about the girls and about Patrick. And Patrick went there one Halloween, and the only costume he would ever wear was a sweatshirt. And that is it. So Tom asked him about how many sisters does he have. And he said, I have 4 sisters. I have Kathleen, Christine, Megan, and this one that they call Grandma. So, yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Oh, that's sweet.
That's pretty awesome. All right, well, this was so wonderful, and like I said, I think James might have clarified the question about your father.
I mean, assuming he's
Army.
right. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure he's right.
Yeah.
So, World War I, that was so foreign to me. And remember, they were putting together the World War II monument, and I said to Pop here, I said, oh, I want to get my father's name on that. We have to figure out how to do that. And he shook his head and he said, your father wasn't in World War II. It was World War I.
I know.
I was so shocked. The same way I was so shocked when I found out how old Grandma was. I was in grade school, and everybody else's mother was like 7 or 8 years younger than Grandma. And I'll never forget, I was in the backyard hanging clothes, and somehow I asked her. And when she told me, I thought she was going to die the next day.
What?
How old she was.
Was she significantly older of a mom at that time?
Yes, she had. Well, how old was she when she had you? Over 40, I think, like 42.
Oh.
Oh.
Oh, for the time that is actually, she's
Surprising.
lucky just with birth complications that there was no problem. Oh, wow. Okay. It's sad. You probably asked her and she was probably, well, gosh, yeah. Then by the time you asked her, she might have been late 40s. And back then, people would have been in their late 20s equivalent children.
Yeah.
Oh, well. See, Grammy was a revolutionary. We just didn't know it. She was breaking the mold right out of the gate. So, God. Well, we miss her and love her and think about her often here in California. We miss all of you. And it was so nice to see your faces. And you can't see our Uncle Joe, but he's in a bright green Dayglow shirt, which is really...
It's pretty great.
It's great.
Never forget that.
All right. Well, it's so wonderful seeing all of you. Have a great rest of your summer. And we do hope to see you soon in person.
In person
Yeah.
would be amazing. But this was very good too.
Well, I talked to your mother way more than I ever did. I just talked to her today.
Oh,
I
nice.
called her a couple times before we left. And so she called us tonight, and that's why I said she didn't know about this podcast. Oh, well, they always like stories of the past. That's what she said.
Well, and that's the one thing I've told Christine, because sometimes Christine will text me something's going on with the family, and she goes, well, didn't your mother tell you? And I said, okay, our mother is the worst town crier ever. You can tell her something and it barely even goes to anybody that she sees the same day.
It goes nowhere.
Because she's saying prayers and she's thinking about it and she thinks she's told somebody.
Or she's told like one person and then thinks she's told everybody. And then you'll be in a conversation with her and she's referring to things that you're like, wait, what are you even talking about? You haven't told us any of this. What?
Our family bulletin person or newsletter, like Michael, is Virginia.
Oh, Virginia for sure.
If you want somebody to be known, just
That's who
tell
you tell.
Virginia. Yep, there you go.
In a good way.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad way, but if you want something to make it through the whole chain of command,
you want someone to actually follow up and make sure that information gets spread.
it's Virginia. Ironic. There you go. It's Virginia. So, all right. Well, like I said, love you, miss you. Hope to see you in person soon. Thank you for sharing your stories about some of the Killmond history. We got one or two mysteries solved.
Yeah, we did.
possibly. So there you go.
Well, thank you everybody for listening to Family Dynamics, and you can follow us on social media at our handle, which is Family DynamiKs with a K. And we also have a Patreon. You can join our Patreon and become a patron. And that's it for us. So thank you for joining us on Family Dynamics.